Hello, Algorator Soulmates. I'm Al Reynolds, and welcome to part 4 of Diddy Do It with our legal beagles. Before we dive in, I would like to thank all of my subscribers for all of your support and for joining. And remember, please hit that like button. Hit it right now. Hit that subscribe button if you're new, because I need your subscriptions. And also, don't forget, for engagement purposes, to put those facts emojis in the chat. Can I please? Everyone, can you please show me some love? And if you've liked part 1, 2, and 3, put some facts emojis in the chat right now. Also, before we get started, I want to share with everyone once again the concept of the show. I'm Al Reynolds, and I'm your host. And the nature and the premise of this show is to be a fast-paced, ton of questions, ton of topics, disruptive, sometimes over the top, sometimes rude, and sometimes messy type of show. Think of it as Nancy Grace meets Rapid Fire meets Fox Soul's Face Off. Yes, there's going to be plenty of times where I will be cutting our legal beagles off. Yes, there will be some shouting. Yes, there will be some agreement. There will be some disagreement. There may be some of all of the above. Be sure to pay attention, though, and break out your pen and paper, because we might share something. And also, sorry, I don't know what that is. Also, be sure to watch part 1, part 2, and part 3 if you haven't. All right, that's part 1, that's part 2, and part 3. Because baby, when I tell you, when we break it down legally, we break it down. Now tonight, I have a little bit of a surprise for you. Guess what? We have 2 new legal beagles that are joining us. All right, please put your hands together for the corporate entertainment attorney, the lovely counselor Jourdan Williams. Welcome, Jourdan.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Counselor Williams is a HBCU trained attorney, and you guys know that I teach at a HBCU, have been teaching at HBCU since 2008. And did you know that 76% of all U.S. attorneys that are African American went to an HBCU? Please put a happy or an applause in the chat for Counselor Williams. Also joining us will be the incomparable attorney Ron L. Jones from Washington, D.C. Ron L. Jones went to law school at George Washington University, and he is also a former candidate for the D.C. Attorney General's office in 2022. Ryan Jones has also worked in the Attorney General's office on special projects for this Washington, D.C. Ryan has been practicing law for 12 years. All right, please put an applause or a chat or something. Oh, I think my bad. I forgot. So in the chat, if Counselor Williams says something that you like, we want you to use blue heart emojis. If Counselor Jones says something that you like, please use an otter emoji. He has decided that he wants an otter emoji to reference to understanding and listening to what he has to say. All right, everyone, back to the show. So tonight, at the top of the show, I always like to give you a rundown of what we're going to be talking about. Tonight, because we have a corporate lawyer and a former special projects out of the Attorney General office lawyer, we're going to talk about, first thing we're going to talk about is brand protection. When I say brand protection, what is all of this civil and now criminal activity surrounding Diddy, all these lawsuits that he has settled? What is this doing to his brand? Not only his personal brand, but also the brands that he's in business with. Do you think that any of this had anything to do with his dissolution with Ciroc? Did it have anything to do with the dissolution of the DeLeon contract that he had? We're going to discuss all that tonight with our corporate entertainment attorney, Attorney Williams. And she's going to teach us what a moral clause is and why everyone who's in any type of contract, if there's a moral clause, what that means if something like this happens to you. All right. The second thing we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the multiple jurisdiction and the law that is surrounding when things are happening in 3 different states simultaneously. We're going to lean in with Counselor Jones, because Counselor Jones is very familiar with that, working out of the Attorney General's office, working with the DMV, which stands for the District of Columbia, Maryland, as well as Virginia. We're going to talk about also, the third thing we're going to talk about is criminal versus civil. Diddy now has both in play. Which one do you deal with first? Do you deal with the civil lawsuit first, or do you deal with the criminal lawsuit first? We're going to lean in on both attorneys is that they give their opinion on which one he should attack first and why. After that, guess what? We're going to really get down in the weeds, and we're going to talk about who purchased Diddy's Revolt shares. We know that when it first was announced, it was anonymous. Was it anonymous for a reason? Because today, guess what? We found out that it's Rich Dennis. Rich Dennis, who we also know owns Essence, is now the majority shareholder or purchased Diddy shares of Revolt. What does that mean? How did this happen? Did they have a relationship before? We're going to dig in deep with these 2 legal beagles right here. Then, of course, I'm going to ask these 2 right here, if Diddy was their client, what would they be telling Diddy right now today? Has anything changed? Would you want him to come back to the States? Would you want him to reposition how he's handling this? We're going to ask these 2 legal beagles tonight. And of course, we're going to also go back to the chat towards the end of the night and ask you to put your questions in the chat so that we can make sure that any questions that you have about anything that we talk about, you can get the answers from these 2 legal beagles and their specialty. And lastly, before we close out tonight, of course, this right here is a show about the court of public opinion. In the public's opinion, we're going to ask these 2 legal beagles, is he guilty still? Are we still leaning in the public opinion, not in legal terms, but in the public opinion, is he still guilty? Or are we having a little bit more empathy for him and think that he should have more of a fair chance in all of this? All right, with that being said, we're going to jump right in. All right, Counselor Williams. Now, as a corporate attorney, and without sharing all your business, we know that you've worked with some of the biggest companies, entertainment companies, and studios in the country. As a corporate attorney, if you were in business with Diddy, say for instance, if you were over at Hulu, and Diddy had a reality show at Hulu, with all of this that's going on as a corporate attorney, what are the conversations that you're having in your corporate boardrooms right now? Are you keeping Diddy on the platform? Are you knocking him off the platform because this is trafficking accusations? What are you thinking, and what are the conversations you're having with your law partners at that studio?
So Diddy reportedly did have a reality show with Hulu that was axed in 2023. But for me, I would take another approach. I think they were going for the follow his family, follow his kids, kind of the keeping up with the Kardashians, keeping up with the Combs style show. And given everything that he's facing now with the lawsuits and the accusations, maybe turn it into a documentary style show. Maybe there's a way to salvage what they created and do like, the Murdoch family. Netflix followed them for several parts, followed them through the conviction of the father. I would turn it into that to make sure we're still capturing what the public is interested in, but we're not necessarily celebrating or doing PR for him, right? Because these are very serious accusations. You don't want to paint him in a light that's not true to what is actually happening in reality. So we would be talking about any type of First Amendment or defamation claims that we could receive by, doing this documentary style show. And that really may mean talking to him about what access he wants to give, if he's a willing participant in something that's more objective, where he may not have as much creative control. I think we've seen in his other reality shows that he likes a lot of creative control. So it would depend on how willing he would be to be reported on, as opposed to being the star of the show.
So that's interesting, because I would think, and Counselor Jones, you can chime in here, I would think that I wouldn't want to be in bed with Diddy because of the association of sex trafficking and underage girls. To me, that's icky. I don't want that. I don't want my brand associated with that. I don't care what the views look like. Kind of like I would personally, if I owned Hulu, would separate myself kind of like how Adidas separated themselves from Kanye. They felt very offended, right, by his anti-Semitic rhetoric. And they were like, hey, even though we're making gazillions of dollars over here, this is not our brand and we don't want anything to do with it. Attorney Jones, what do you think?
A lot of puns there with the not wanting to be in bed with Diddy with all the allegations. So look, I think everyone's in. It's a a quick fire type of reading response situation here. You're learning in real time, and if you're smart, you're just gonna walk away from it. You're just gonna back up slowly and see how things develop.
Gotcha.
And accuse of anything criminally, but we just don't know. And I think there's a lot of wait and see.
Okay. All right. So talk to me, Attorney Williams. Did this tell me what this moral clause is and how a lot of people allegedly may or may not have exercised the moral clause in Diddy's contracts in order to relate themselves or be in bed. Oh Lord, let me stop saying being in bed, to unwind their relationships. For instance, Ciroc or Dillion. We know that those were two huge income streams for Diddy, as well as his chairmanship over at Revolt, in which he resigned. Did that possibly have anything to do with the moral clause in his contracts with each of those companies? And tell us, what exactly is a moral clause and how and who executes the moral clause in order to distance or, cut ties?
Yeah, so I will first start with the First Amendment, right? Everyone always says, oh, I have First Amendment rights. I can say what I want to say, do what I want to do. That only applies to the government. The government cannot control your speech, your behavior, et cetera, only in certain cases. When it comes to private companies, especially ones that are hiring you for marketing reasons, they have complete control as related to that specific deal. And the way they have that control is through what we call a morals clause. So basically what that means is you agree as the talent that you will not behave in a way that brings embarrassment or ridicule or scandal to the company's brand. And if you do, the company has the right to terminate your deal.
Mm-hmm.
That is what happened with Kanye and Adidas. He had the morals clause. His actually also included something about they could terminate the agreement if he had 30 consecutive days of mental health treatment. So every company can create its own standard for what's in the morals clause, but generally they just don't want to be embarrassed, right?
Gotcha.
So
yeah, go ahead.
As related to the lawsuits that Diddy actually sued Diageo, which is the parent company for Ciroc and Dillion, the spirits that he marketed since 2007. So he sued them for racial discrimination. And in May 2023, November of that same year is when Cassie filed her lawsuit against Diddy. Right. So we don't actually know the reason why Diddy and Diageo parted ways. But I would think, considering the claims made in Cassie's complaint, they were very serious. They even had a disclaimer. I could see Diageo using that to say, this is what we're going to use to terminate this relationship. Because as of January this year, Diddy has no business relationship with them whatsoever.
And that would be with the Ciroc as well as the Dillion, right? So we are assuming, or we allegedly saying that could have played a major role. That clause gave them an out. Now that's so interesting because, like you said, or like I think Attorney Jones said, he hasn't been charged with anything. So do you think maybe with the Cassie, if the Cassie was the ring the alarm situation for Diageo, right? Do you think that him settling was almost an admitting some wrongdoing, and he just didn't want it to come out? So he was like, let me pay her off. Let's settle this so we don't have to worry about it. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know if I would say that it was a complete admittance. Maybe there was some truth to what she was saying, but it wasn't worth the risk. And when it comes to those morals clauses, it doesn't even have to be criminal prosecution, right? He could have said one truthful thing in the whole affidavit. That would have been enough for that company to say, we don't want you representing our brand anymore, especially given everything else you've been accused of over the years. This is the final straw.
Now, think about it. Were they wrong? Look what else came out. Right? Were they wrong? Attorney Jones, were they wrong?
Look, the way that law worked in New York, where it opened it up for a certain period of time for people to file old complaints against folks, that's where this was born out of. And you'd imagine that he didn't have the foresight or maybe even the notice to try to settle it before it got filed. But he should not have let that thing get filed and then, settle the next day. If you were going to settle the next day, you should have settled the day before. And none of this would have blown apart like this.
That's so interesting. So if you two were in his council chambers, when you first heard the rumbles, what would your advice have been?
One, I want to evaluate the truth, whatever type of, can they prove their case? Let's go through all the evidence that they may have. Let's see what kind of terms that they're willing to agree to, and see if it's actually, you're doing that cost benefit analysis, that it would be better to just settle on the front end than after something's filed.
Right. And it's so interesting to me because, it's almost like this knee-jerk response of not wanting to give her any money, to her bringing it to the public's attention, to giving her money to make her go away, only for you to lose all your deals. Like, you basically, everything that really props up your brand has washed away in all of this horrible water and backwash of assault cases. And now we went from assault cases to trafficking. And now we're talking about little kids. Now we're talking about use. So now this civil situation, because remember, Cassidy's situation was civil, we now are entering into criminal waters. So with that being said, let's rotate into the multiple jurisdiction laws that are associated, because we know in this particular case, we're talking about the state of California, we're talking about the state of Florida, and we're talking about the state of New York, right? Now, Attorney Jones, as an attorney general working in the attorney general's office, you're like the lawyer of the whole state. I think we talked about that. At least in my mind, that's how I interpret an attorney general. So how serious would you say the case is given? I mean, how serious is the case given that it's in 3 different jurisdictions? How do they team together? How do they work in concert? How do they execute the warrants when it's 3 different states? As an attorney general, I can imagine that you would have to participate in this process. Can you talk to us about how that works and how serious this is?
For sure. So when you're looking at first, what is the law that they're accusing him of violating? So if it's a federal law, you're going to be looking at the U.S. Attorney's Office. Maybe there's some state charges in there as well. So you're going to have the district attorney or maybe even the attorney general coordinate along with the U.S. Attorney's Office of whichever state that is in order to bring the claims and allegations. Now, there may be some memorandum of understanding between California, Florida, and New York and saying, hey, look, we're going to bring these allegations first, see how it plays out for us, and then be able to use, that judgment against him in those other jurisdictions. And it may just be that it comes to an agreement that they're willing to take a certain kind of deal so that the charges in the particular state may be, substantiated without going to a long protracted trial where you kind of have some certain answer to it.
Okay, so let me ask you this: does one state take preference over another state, or?
So you're looking at a choice of laws. So maybe New York State has some laws that have greater teeth than does Florida in a certain area, right? So you'll say, what's the success look like with the evidence that we have here in Washington, or in New York versus what the evidence they have in Florida versus the evidence in California? Who has the strongest case? And this is going to take a lot of manpower to do an effective communication so that in a short period of time, knowing how criminal cases move.
Okay, so we know that this was birthed out of the Southern District of New York, which is Manhattan. So if you were the Attorney General of the state of New York, do you take the lead here? because you're the one that issued those search warrants for the state of California and the state of Florida. What role would you play as Attorney General in executing this and leading the other states to follow you in trying to come up or, create a common theme as it relates to this particular complaint and case?
Shout out to Latifah James and Rob Bonson. I know that they do an effective job communicating with one another and coordinating to be sure that they're taking the right steps. I think that there's a level of, knowing who should step in. Is it the U.S. attorney that's going to have their arms around this best? Is it going to be one of your district attorneys that have their arms around it best? And you, as the attorney general, stand back unless it's required that you stand out front and really participate. I think attorneys general across this country have gotten a lot of visibility with cases like George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. But those cases wouldn't naturally be in their hands, but for some, issues that caused them to be taken out of the local jurisdictions and into the attorney general's purview.
Got it. So if I hear you correctly, right, an attorney general usually governs what affects the citizens of the state.
That's
right. So in this particular case, you do have a high-profile individual, but what's really going on, except for sex trafficking, maybe for the state, and then we know that the state of New York is very aggressive towards trafficking. If you ever stayed in the hotel there, they have the cards there. So, and it's issued from the Attorney General's office. So maybe in that case, that's what would elevate it to an Attorney General's desk. Okay, got it. Attorney Williams, what would your thoughts be in this if you were over one of the states?
I would definitely want to coordinate as much as possible with any jurisdiction where he has property, because again, you don't know where the assets sit. You don't know where the evidence sits. So I would be making contact, not just where he has homes, but where his companies are, where he may have close contacts, even if it's in another country. I know I read some things online that said, things about crossing borders and such, right? So I would be opening all lines of communication with different government agencies to make sure we all have the same information. We're working for the same objective.
Got it. All right. So the fans are saying, throw some blue. What? You put that back up, producer. Throw some. Okay. What? Okay. Throw some blue hearts in the chat and show Jourdan some love. And what was the one for Ryan?
The otter.
The otter. Hype up Ryan and throw some otter emojis. Okay, fans, hype up Ryan and throw some otter emojis in the chat. All right, we talked about the multiple jurisdictions here, how you try to coordinate each state and all of the attorney offices that are involved in that. Let's talk about, he's got a civil case. It started out as a civil case, right? This thing now has turned into a criminal case. Attorney Williams, Attorney Jones, what in the hell do you do? Do you use the same lawyer for both? Do you get separate lawyers for different ones? He's got so many criminal cases. He's got a rape case. He's hired Jeffrey Epstein's wife's lawyer on one case. Now he has a accusation of trafficking. We got Homeland Security and Border Control involved. So does he attack the civil case first, Attorney Jones, or does he attack the criminal charges first? What do we tell Diddy at this time?
Look, first thing you're going to talk to him about is how he's going to pay for it all. Where's this money coming from? Right? That's what an attorney's going to do. You're going to have that open, honest conversation with him about what he thinks is going to happen, what he thinks should happen. And then you're going to say, what's the evidence show? Can we get our hands on it and let's evaluate it? Then you're going to talk about what the cost looks like. And then you're going to see that one attorney can't do it all. You're going to need a team of lawyers. You're going to need lawyers in whatever jurisdiction they're going to be in, people who specialize in certain areas of the criminal code or civil code. You're going to need a lot of manpower to make sure that you're moving at the speed at whichever the courts require. And so you want to go criminal first, but this is starting civilly, and now it's kind of leading into criminal. So you don't have the same, I guess, options as you've seen historically with the way things move from going from criminal and then having a civil attached to the criminal allegations of fractioning and votes. So he's going to have to try some legal maneuvering similar to that of Donald Trump, which has been, quite a display. But he need to have that same type of legal maneuvering capability.
Got it.
To protect himself.
All right, so maybe if I hear you correctly, maybe that's why he's selling his shares. He needs money in order to navigate this. And if I heard you correctly, you're saying it is your professional opinion that you would attack the criminal first. And is there a reason is that just something that, and then excuse me, because I'm not a lawyer, is that something that professionally that's what you would do, or is that what most lawyers would do in this case? Because civil is not as serious as criminal.
Well, with the criminal, right, you fight that, you start to create a record. And if you do the civil stuff first, and the records that is created there could be, there's different evidentiary standards, what can get in, and how it gets into the evidence and how it gets into the record. You start to create a record. You can use that same record from the civil cases over on the criminal side. You said this, so on and so forth. And now you're living with that record that you created on the civil.
Got it. So it's almost like precedence. Like you could really screw yourself by doing something on the civil side that shows liability on the criminal side, right? Or vice versa.
That's right.
Vice versa, right? If I had to come behind the criminal, I would say, thank you, lawyers. So appreciate it. We're gonna take this over here. We're gonna get this civil thing closed up real good. Okay. All right. I'm glad I'm understanding that, because that really did, it had me baffled. Like, how do you juggle both? And do you juggle both? And which one do you focus on? And for me, I would just be a complete mess. All right, let's go and talk about who purchased Diddy's shares of Revolt. So today we found out, after other reports, that there was anonymous of who purchased his shares. We found out today, which I said on this show, I hope you guys remember, that they're not going to be able to hide who purchased those shares. It's public information, and they're going to have to share it. Well, we found out it's not his mama like we talked about on here. It's not his daughters. It's, in fact, Rich Dennis. All right. Attorney Williams. It's Rich Dennis. What does this mean? What does this say to you as an attorney? How does this make you feel to know, with what's going on in Diddy, with what's going on with the accusations, what does this make you feel, Attorney Williams, with Rich Dennis being the purchaser of his shares?
It makes me very curious, right? So he already owns Essence and several other businesses in the media space. And I can see him trying to get a handle on the TV side, right, through Revolt. But it makes me curious what the relationship between him and Diddy really is. I wouldn't think a businessman like Rich Dennis would want to be associated with all the chaos, which is probably why they tried to do it anonymously.
Got it.
Credit. If it is, in fact, him, who is the anonymous buyer. But I would want to stay 50 feet away from this mess, given the other platforms that we know him for.
Right. When you say platforms, you mean,
Essence. Yeah.
Essence. Right. Because I was thinking the exact same thing. Oh, my gosh, I'm glad we're on the same page. Because I was thinking Essence would be, of his holdings, a very major holding, because as we all know, Black women it's one of the country's largest consumers and spenders. They're also the largest influencers of what many argue of the country. They run their household. They teach their kids what to do. They teach them how to purchase, what brands to be associated with. And how is it that a woman-centric CEO, of that brand, of that power, is purchasing these shares from someone who is abusing those women? Is that how you're thinking? Because that's how I'm kind of interpreting it.
I mean, when your viewership is mostly Black women and you are in business with someone who's been accused of abusing Black women, that does raise, I think, very fair questions. I think, if it is, in fact, Rich Dennis who bought the shares, he will need to answer just so he continues to have that trust with his base, right? Because naturally, it causes him discomfort.
Okay. So, and the way things are set up these days, you can't just make a business move anymore. Because for me, I would think this is a pretty clever business move. This is a space that you don't have a handle on. This is an opportunity to grab it, and you grab it. But then look at your base. Look what that whole brand is built on. It's women. It's women empowerment. It's women rights. So for you to get in bed with somebody who abused your power base, it's kind of icky, right? It kind of feels weird to me. But maybe, he made a sound business decision and said that he's got to put that behind him because there are no charges. These are all allegations. These are all, complaints at this point. So therefore, he may have thought that it's safe right now to grab this because I'm sure he got a good deal, I would assume. And, he'll deal with the repair of the brand disassociation later. Maybe so. What do you think, Attorney Jones?
Wow. I mean, we're watching what you might look at as the final stages of his celebrity, but then again, you may be watching it grow to a larger level. Attorney Williams' suggestion about Hulu and a 5-part or 10-part series or documentary, I think that might rival something like we've seen with The Last Dance or with Johnny Depp's thing that they had on Netflix. So, I mean, it might take a celebrity to a whole new level, and it's got a lot of names involved. So there's a lot to think about here.
Okay. All right, guys, we're at that part where I'm going to ask you if Diddy was your client, Counselor Williams, if Diddy was your client, what type of conversations would you be having with him today?
The first thing I would say is be quiet. And I think he's doing that. We haven't heard anything from him. Paparazzi, they've gotten a few shots of him at the Miami airport. I would not be speaking to anyone. I would not be going to any events. I would be very low key, very quiet. And I think he's doing that very well. I would continue to, as Attorney Jones said, working with both civil and criminal lawyers to come up with a viable strategy. Because I'm more familiar with the civil part, I would definitely say, first, you want to make sure your businesses aren't affected. You might want to distance yourself to protect the companies, which he has done. So it appears to me that he is getting efficient counsel, good counsel, and is listening to them.
Okay. So my question would be, would you want him to come back to the States? Why is he out of the States? Why is he away from his family? Why, would you tell him he needs to come back, or you think it's okay? Counselor Williams.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would say until there are formal charges that we are dealing with, you are a free man. He said he can do it. He can behave like a free man. When there's a reason for him to be in the States, he can be in the States. But I do think, to his credit, you don't want to act guilty. You don't want to act, too defensive. He's moving about his life as a person who's innocent. And I think he can do that for as long as he does not have formal charges.
All right, Counselor Jones, if Diddy was your lawyer, what type of conversations would you be having with him right now?
If I were Diddy's lawyer, wow. First, innocent until proven guilty. That's something that we really need to hold on to. And as lawyers, we really need to push. So I'd be pushing that narrative. I wouldn't be saying much as litigation is ongoing on his behalf. We'd be trying to get together the strategy and down to a level of detail where you can predict what each day is going to look like. That's what any good attorney would do. I think that's where the start would look like. We don't know how deep or how far this is going to go. So we'd be sitting back and waiting for the next development and just being prepared.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm going to give you my bit of advice. I would fire both of you. That's horrible advice, in my opinion. It's too corporate. I think we have to understand that there's a whole public opinion that's around Diddy and how he's moving and what he's looking like in these streets. So we can't do legality. And, I went to George Washington Law and I went to Southern Law. And this is what I would tell my clients, innocent until proven guilty. Hell no. In public opinion, I feel like this is ugly. He needs to get his ass back over here. He needs to be over here with his family. Where are his girls? He's been accused of trafficking. He's been accused of workers. He needs to come back and create an image in the public that what they're saying about him is 110% not true. You don't need to be at an airport getting caught with a mule who found drugs on him. You don't need to be getting on a plane, running out the country because it looks like you are running from something. Horrible advice, counselor.
Wait a minute. Do you think he can rehabilitate his image? All the music videos, all the lives, all of this and all of that. You think we're going to start putting him in family pictures with all his family and smiling?
Absolutely. Trump does it every day. Trump does it every day. Trump's been proven guilty of rape. Trump has been proven guilty of wire fraud, falsifying documents. Trump has been proven guilty of many crimes to the tune of $450 million in every state he lands in. People are taking pictures with him and babies. Okay? So, of course you can. Diddy has that type of PR around him. We like him. He influenced the culture. So you can show us all the evidence you want to. But I feel like if done correctly, you can sway public opinion. Unfortunately, right now, public opinion is like, oh my God, is this true? Guys, we've been hearing this about Diddy for over 2 decades. 2 decades. So what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. If he came back instead and had this redemption tour, I would call it redemption tour. I'll be in church. I'll get baptized. I'll have my kids. I'll be rocking my baby. I would do all that. I think it would help neutralize all this ugliness that people are painting around him. I'm not saying that it's right. I'm saying that if I was trying to repair a man that in public opinion is found guilty, this is how I would mediate it. So for you guys, someone, oh, go to Antigua. Oh, why are you at it? Why don't you just bounce on over to St. Bart's? Say hi to our favorite chef and our favorite bartender over there in Le Cobb. Absolutely not. Because what you're telling to me, what you're saying to me is you're spitting in my face about the seriousness of the legalities that you have going on. In my opinion, this is just my opinion. You can take that and $2.50 will get you to a train stop in New York City from one to the other.
Go, Jourdan Williams, please. You go.
In my opinion, I mean, first of all, comparing him to Trump, I mean, first of all, Trump's a white man in America. Okay. So he's afforded a lot of privileges that even Sean Diddy Combs does not have. That's first of all. And second of all, let's be honest. Whether Diddy was in Antigua, Mexico, France, New York, Miami, Chicago, we would think the same thing. The public opinion literally would not change no matter where he is. That's not the issue. Where he is not the issue. What the issue is decades of rumors of the party, the women, that has followed him. His artists from Bad Boy accusing him of mismanaging it.
Yeah, and it never got them anywhere. It never worked. No one ever believed it. No one cared. They took it because we danced to his music. When it came on in the club, we bought an extra bottle. We didn't care. 20 years they've been telling us about this crap, but we didn't care. We liked him. We believed everything that he put in marketing. Everything that he said about himself, we fell in love with it. We cannot ignore the power of the public perception and the public opinion. Just like Black people said, you're not getting O.J. Simpson. I don't care what he did. And Johnny Cochran, the lawyer, the stellar lawyer, the genius that he is, got that man off. He got that man off on public opinion, right? And legalities in the legal system. But at the end of the day, we all kind of knew what was going on, right? But we were not going to give that Black person up. We were not going to give that Black person up. The media blew it way larger than what they've done to other people that don't look like us. So I feel like, that's what I'm saying. I feel like if Diddy came back and tried to neutralize what's going on, I just feel like people would get back endeared to him and be like, okay, so let's see what the facts really are. Let us hear everything intently before we throw him out with the baby, the water with the baby, or whatever that saying is. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah. Look, I mean, Diddy's he's a huge figure. and he has further impact than any of us really know. And I think the amount of people that are involved that are going to come up and step up on his behalf, I think we're going to wait to see. And, you know, him being in the United States, trying to go on a tour to rehabilitate his image, I don't know that he can do that. I don't think that would be a good use of his time.
I think that just like Kanye, we are obsessed with our urban culture creators. And just like Kanye knows how to turn a narrative at the drop of a hat. Go out. Everybody's going to follow you. At this time, there will be no press that wouldn't follow Diddy. Create your narrative of a reformation. Go out. Like I said, go to church. Get tears. You talking to a pastor crying.
So you gonna say I'm reformed now?
I'm reformed. I made a mistake. 20 years. I was out of my mind.
That's like admitting it.
I'm serious. Y'all think I'm joking. People are that forgiving, especially in the Black community. We're very forgiving because we know the skeletons that we have in our own closets, right? We say this all the time. I just feel like, and I'm not taking up for him. I don't want anybody to think that I'm taking up for Diddy. I am not. What I'm saying, though, if I was this deep in public opinion of being guilty, I would neutralize it. I wouldn't be running out of the country, going to lay on a beach somewhere, or be caught in an airport with a 25-year-old mule that Rodney Jones told us about. I just wouldn't do it. I wouldn't talk to him. I wouldn't talk to anybody that's associated with this. I just wouldn't do it. I just feel like I would be quiet, like you said. I do agree with both of you on that. I would be quiet. I would be still, and I would create with a crisis publicist some way to neutralize all the negative, because now everybody's saying you're bad, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad. And it's not bad like Bad Boys. It's bad like, oh, you did it and you need to go to jail.
I mean, but bad has always been his brand. And aside from that, I think maybe you would be right if the Cassie situation didn't happen. That changed everything. I think before Cassie filed her lawsuit, it was always just, oh, I heard this, I read that, but we never really actually knew what was going on. Cassie's complaint was extremely graphic. The abuse that she detailed, that she experienced, was something that I personally have never read in a complaint before. It even had a disclaimer. So I think after reading that, and post Me Too, in this world where we are more cognizant of how women are treated, you know, male abusers, especially those that in power, when she filed that lawsuit, any chance Diddy had to rehabilitate himself was over. And specifically when it comes to Black women, we have been historically very forgiving, which has oftentimes been to our detriment. So I think now you're seeing Black women be less forgiving to men who are abusers.
Okay, all right, Counselor Williams. So you don't listen to R. Kelly music no more?
I don't.
At all?
Stepping in
all right, Counselor Williams. You know that you have a shield. You have a license that you can't lie.
I don't.
All right, okay, Counselor Williams. You're no longer listening to Diddy music anymore.
We'll see what the charges.
Okay. All right, everybody. Before we close this out tonight, I want to thank Counselor John Jones, Ryan Jones, and Counselor Jourdan Williams. Let's get to a couple of these questions. Please throw your questions in the chat. We'll try to get to one or two of them before we give our public opinion resolution of whether he's guilty or not. All right, so let's start with some questions. All right. Any questions? Producer. Okay. SL Will said, after what Diddy did to Cassie and others, there's no apology tour that would help. That's not a question.
Well, she backed whatever this person said, backed up what we just said.
All right. Can I get a question? No questions? Where's our bailiff? Bailiff, say something. Or do we have questions? We don't have questions. In chat, tell us to move on. What should we do? Oh, my goodness. All right. Why are we not talking about his billionaire club friends? Is a question.
Billionaire club friends that we don't want to make mad in this show.
Okay. Why are they saying Jay-Z is next?
Oh, man.
I don't know. I don't want to speculate.
Al, why are you supporting? Like I said, I'm not supporting. I'm just being a devil's advocate. Everybody, it's called entertainment. We just throwing out how people feel. It's not how I feel, and I'll say it 100 times. It's not how I feel. But I'm just stirring the pot. We're having a conversation. We're understanding both sides of the fence here. How much do y'all think shares were worth? Oh, that's a good question. Not sure. I haven't looked into that. Another question. What do you guys think the outcome would be? That's a good question. Councilor Williams, what do you think the outcome would be?
I mean, at the minimum, I think he may possibly have trouble with the drug charges. That seems to be, it seems to be a high burden for him because there's so many stories. I think somebody said there's like video evidence of him doing illegal substances. So if that's the case, I think especially if they got the mules and all of that, testifying to witnessing and doing at his direction, he's going to have a problem when it comes to the.
All right, Attorney Jones, do you agree?
I'm going to take it in a different direction. I think whatever happens on the other side of this is going to be transformational for how we write laws and what is legal and what isn't legal and how we define, responsibility or who's going to be, who can step up and make a complaint. I think we're going to see certain laws revisited.
Okay, DeMonte says, how long do you think it'll take before charges are filed?
So what's going to happen is some, jurisdiction is going to try to put together a grand jury, show them the evidence, and then put together whether they not think they have a viable case against him. And that could take a few months. It could take a week. It just depends on the type of evidence they have and the apparatus they have in place in whatever jurisdiction that is to get that done.
Okay. Beauty and Silver King says, when do you think Diddy will be arrested?
It can happen any day. I don't think we would know. We don't know what evidence they've already gotten. We don't actually know who they've already talked to. They can be talking to people and it not be in the media. So we just don't know.
All right. LP Pro said, do you think Diddy hiring Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney is a smart move?
There's a comment that I once heard, you hire Johnny Cochran, you look guilty. But, they said you hire Johnny Cochran, you go home. If that attorney is that sound, you hire the best you possibly can. I don't know that person's work, but I imagine they're pretty good.
Sage and Love want to know, will his kids be all right? And how would you navigate their public opinion? Oh, that's a good question, Sage and Love.
The kids thing is a bit touchy, especially because I know some of them are adults, some of them are minors. I think, hopefully he does already have in place who would be in charge of his minor children and he has trust funds or whatever set up for each child. But I would hope, and I would think, because he is a bit of a family man, that his team knows how to handle the children and their various images and businesses and all of that. So I think, we can say a lot about Diddy. I do believe that he's a good father and that he has his kids protected.
Okay, everyone's asking from the court, your two opinions, is the case against Diddy really strong?
I don't think 3 different jurisdictions are wasting resources because they just like doing raids.
Our special projects in Attorney General's office, what do you think?
Oh, gosh. I think this is a mess of proportions that we actually haven't seen before. This has got to be set of precedents. And, most attorneys are not supposed to comment on it while it's happening. I just got to wait and see. I think this is a bigger mess than you might actually be able to predict.
Okay. Any other questions? Do you believe because of Diddy lawsuit with the liquor company making the white man mad and has something to do with why he was raided? This is by Gwendolyn Sims. So,
not necessarily. I think the timing is crazy, but I don't think they're necessarily connected. from Cassie's lawsuit, I think back then they even said she had been requesting that amount of money for some time before she actually filed the lawsuit. So these could be situations that were happening at the same time, but not necessarily connected.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. Our time is up. And before we go, Attorney Brian Jones, tell us, in public opinion, is Diddy guilty or not?
In the public opinion, oh gosh, it's bad out there. The posts, the comments, I'm reading. Oh man, it's brutal.
All right, is that guilty or not?
I have to give a not guilty or guilty.
Yep.
In public opinion, yeah, he's pretty guilty.
All right, Attorney Jourdan Williams, is P. Diddy, according to public opinion, guilty or not guilty?
Oh yeah, the court of public opinion has packed him up. So in the court of public opinion, he is very guilty.
All right, everybody, and last but not least, in public opinion, I'm going to give Diddy still again tonight guilty. He will be considered guilty in public opinion. All right, everybody, please be sure to add your comments, drop in the comments, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you're new to the channel, and meet us back here again tomorrow at 6:30 for part 5, Diddy Do It. Have a good night, everybody. And thank you, Attorney Williams and Attorney Jones, for joining me tonight and breaking all of this down. Everybody have a good night.
Good night.
Night.